I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. That my mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper.
Hello, welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. Welcome, Timmy. Timmy, welcome. Welcome to the 10 of you who are here. I said who is here, and I guess I just gambled on a couple of you being here. Well, it's good to see some of you here. Any of you watched the French Open final? Natalie, did you catch that? Timmy, I think you need to lie back. Okay, can you try and relax? Just relax. Sleep. Mel Stella, good to see you. It's been a while. Tell that schnauzer. Okay. Anyone here watch the French Open? There are 40 of you in chat. Someone must have watched it. Anyone? Still no response. Okay. Well, I guess we can get to work if that's the case. Right. So we're going to leave off, or we're going to continue exactly where we were cut off yesterday. I had like a power failure. It's actually supposed to be snowing any minute now. So it's pretty cold where I am, as I think you can see. So we're going to continue with Laurie VALLOW's opening statements. Are you guys ready for that? Natalie says, I just saw the winners holding the cup. You do know it was the longest French Open ever. It really was quite an epic game. Jody, good to see you. Okay, here we go. You guys ready?
Go ahead.
I first met Brandon when he was marrying my niece, Melanie. Melanie and I are very close because my sister, her mother, passed away when she was just 9 years old. So Melanie and I think of each other and love each other like a mother and daughter, even though we are aunt and niece. So our families remained close, Melanie and Brandon's family and my family. And in each other's lives, like everyday lives. We spent holidays together and shared in everyday life. I was there for Melanie and Brandon's wedding and for the birth of all 4 of their children. I was also very close to all 4 of their children. In this case, you will hear Brandon himself tell you that someone shot a gun at his car. You will learn in this testimony that Brandon was not hurt. You will learn that he wasn't even sure what had happened. But you will hear that Brandon immediately blamed me, which begs the question, was I an enemy to Brandon? That is news to me, and hopefully by the end of this trial, we will all have some answers to that question. In this case, you will learn that Brandon had called 911, and Gilbert Police did respond. You will learn that Brandon speaks of a puke green.
What was the words that Laurie repeated over and over again in her previous opening session? It wasn't "you will learn," was it? Was it something like the facts will show? Well, now it seems like she's saying you will learn, right?
Jeep. And then he offers the officers a camo green color that he's speaking of on his phone. He says a green Jeep. Then you will hear the neighbor who says that it was a dark blue Jeep that was parked in front of the neighbor's house. You will learn that Brandon very quickly hired a private investigator to find out where I was living out of the state of Arizona so he could inform the police. You will see Brandon exchange emails.
You will learn, you will see. It seems like almost a kind of hypnosis that Laurie uses. It's like almost like she's casting a spell on someone by saying, you will learn, and you will learn it from me, kind of thing. Kind of an interesting technique. Whether it works, I'm not sure.
Email information with
that's
Detective
right. Thanks,
Miller,
Stella.
the case agent in this case, about my whereabouts. and about the financial dealings of my niece, Melanie Boudreaux. You will learn that Brandon was not particularly satisfied with the investigation that Gilbert Police was conducting, so he did his own investigation.
So it's almost like Laurie has learned herself that maybe the evidence will show is not the best adage, because maybe the evidence showed something else. So now it's maybe you will learn. Regardless of the evidence, you will learn blah, blah, blah. Kind of an interesting adaptation, right?
Hiring his own private investigator to follow his wife, Melanie Boudreaux.
Hi,
You will find
Christina.
out that Brandon had access to the VIN number of a Jeep and gave it to the police. You will find out that after that event, he quickly changed his story from a camo green Jeep to a gray Jeep. You will then learn that Brandon continued to provide information he was personally finding out to Detective Pillar, the case agent in this case. You will learn that Detective Pillar and Brandon discussed through email how they can demonstrate Melanie's financial gain if Brandon were to have died around October 2nd, 2019. This is what a conspiracy looks like. Two people trying to set up another person for a crime. My niece, Melanie Boudreaux, is named by the state as a co-conspirator. However, she has not been charged with the crime.
I'm going to object
but
and
I
have that
have.
struck as well, Your Honor.
Jury should disregard that statement.
It's quite interesting. Seems like she's throwing Melanie under the bus, right? Saying that, yeah, there is a conspiracy, it's just not involving me.
You're going to receive an instruction later that all persons that may be involved would not necessarily be charged or called as witnesses, and you'll follow those instructions later. Go ahead.
I was not living in Arizona at the time this alleged incident happened on October 2nd, 2019. I was not even aware such an event had taken place. I did have a close relationship with my brother Alex, but I was not aware of his every move. Melanie also had a close relationship with Alex, but also was not aware of his location at all times. Brandon and Alex also had a good relationship until this accusation. They saw each other frequently at all of our family parties and get-togethers and would often be seen laughing and talking. Alex was a comedian who kept our family laughing. Alex passed away in December 2019 of natural causes, so he is not here to defend himself.
And I'm going to object again to that as well, since he's not party to this. He's
All
not
right,
here.
I'll just remind the jury that what is said in opening statements is not evidence, it's not sworn testimony. Please proceed.
Although the state has alleged that there are several co-conspirators in this case, I am the only one being charged with a crime. So you will be the judge. You will hear and see evidence presented by the state.
Well, you be
The
the jury.
state has, according to the law, 100% burden to prove to you
I'm going
that
to
a
object to misstatement
crime-
of the law in terms of 100%.
All right, again, this is a little bit,
How many objections is that? 8, 9, 10?
bordering on argument, but the jury will receive the instructions on what is and what is not proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
the state has the burden to prove that a crime has been committed here and that I committed that crime. That is the way the law is written. I do not have to show any evidence or put up a defense. I do not have to testify. That is the law. The prosecutors from the state have to prove to you that I conspired, meaning made an agreement with my brother to murder Brandon. So you will decide. Right now, according to the law, I am innocent. I remain innocent until the state of Arizona and its prosecutors show you enough evidence to convince you that I had anything to do with this alleged crime. And I want you to look carefully and determine if this event was a crime at all. Did a shooting actually occur? Only Brandon.
There's a saying, if you're going to lie, tell a big lie. And Laurie's saying did a crime even actually occur? Maybe the glass of the vehicle just shattered by itself.
Brandon claims that it did. Only Brandon
When the glass shattered, there was also the sound that sounded like a gunshot, but maybe it was a crack of lightning.
names me and Alex. You will learn that Brandon himself did own a gun. You will learn that Brandon knew how to shoot his gun.
Good point.
You will learn that Brandon and Melanie were going through a divorce. And you will learn that even though Brandon is the one who actually filed for a divorce, he was blaming me for his divorce. You will learn that the information that the Gilbert Police Department and Detective Pillar, the case agent on this case, learned about.
Doesn't it seem like that language where you say you will learn this, it's kind of almost like appropriating authority. It's saying, trust me as the narrator of this story. You're going to learn this, you're going to learn that. It's in a way, especially if you reinforce it over and over again, it's in a way stronger than the admittedly somewhat confusing, I wouldn't say it's that confusing, but all of the evidence put together, the cell phone data, the photos of the vehicle in certain areas, the footage, that mosaic is a little less straightforward. And so she's basically making the case, put your confidence in me and in the way that I'm telling the story in a simple, confident way. And I think a lot of people fall for that. A lot of simple-minded people fall for that. If it sounds, I'm talking about almost the pacing of the words, sounds soothing and encouraging, almost like a sermon, whereas something else might be factual, but might be less fun to listen to. Does that make sense?
Me and my brother Alex was from Brandon Boudreaux. You will learn that Brandon and Detective Pillar communicated frequently and were on a first name basis. I want you to look closely at the motivation of Brandon and the Gilbert Police Department, because I'm the only one charged with the crime.
So again, she's raising motive. Do you remember we spoke about motive during the previous live, where I said maybe that was a flaw in the prosecutor's opening statement? Well, here, Laurie is raising the question, what was the motive of some of these individuals?
I need you to decipher
Hi, Susan.
what really happened here, because I'm the only one who's being asked to pay a consequence for this
And
crime.
again, Your Honor, I'm going to ask to object and strike that.
Sustained, the jury in their instructions received an instruction that said the jury is not to consider a penalty. That will be in the final instructions there as well. The jury's job is to determine whether or not the state has proved the case beyond a reasonable doubt or the charge beyond a reasonable doubt. Go ahead, proceed.
You will hear many references during this trial about the state versus Lori Daybell. Well, who is the state? The state are the prosecutors.
Can I object to argument and relevance?
Sustained.
You notice when there are these objections, Laurie doesn't look at the judge, doesn't acknowledge the judge, doesn't look at the prosecutor, doesn't acknowledge her. And so in a way, based on her body language, she's saying, I'm dismissing them, you should as well. You know, I'm trying to engage with you, I'm trying to form a relationship with you. Don't look at these people. Listen to what I'm saying, right?
And you, the jury, are brought in to stand between the state and me.
And I'm going to object again to improper statement of the law, argument, and relevance.
Sustained.
You are here to say if a crime.
Do you also notice Laurie just seems, no matter how many times they object, she just continues reading. There's no sense of, wow, I shouldn't be talking about this, turns the page to something that she can do. She treats it just as an interruption and doesn't treat it as having any significance, even though she's in a courtroom.
crime has even been committed at all. You are here to say if I committed this very crime and if the state proved this to you beyond a reasonable doubt. If at the end of this trial you have reasonable doubt, then I remain innocent. If the state does not prove to you that I, 1, committed a crime, and 2, committed this crime, then I remain innocent. In this
Quite interesting choice of words. You know, she's saying, I remain innocent. And I mean, technically, she's a how many times convicted murderer? And she's, I guess, counting on the jury not knowing that. She's saying, I remain innocent. She should actually add to that in this case, right? I quite like this comment from Christina. Yeah.
this case, you will hear a lot of speculation. The definition of speculation is an idea or guess about something that is not known.
Like the end of the world?
During this trial, the state will try to convince you that I committed this crime by using speculation, innuendo, and insinuation. And the state is hoping that this will be enough. In this trial, you will in fact witness a power struggle between the state and the defendant.
Your Honor,
For what
I
a fact
object to
really
argument.
Sustain.
Because they want to convince you, the jury, that a fact is speculation, that a fact is innuendo, that a fact is insinuation, that they knew what I was thinking, what I was feeling, what I was planning, when they don't know it all. You, the jury, have all the power to decide what the facts are and what they're not. Not the state, not the judge, not law enforcement. You. So I implore you to listen carefully and decide for yourselves if the state's theory really makes logical sense. What motivation did I have? What malice have I ever shown to anyone? What benefit would I gain? I am a person who loves all people and has no malice towards anyone, not even the prosecutors who wrongfully try to convict me.
Your Honor, I'm going to object again to relevance and to argument.
Sustained.
I am all about spreading love and will continue to do so, even after this trial is complete, no matter the result. Thank you.
Quite a statement. There's like a trail of dead bodies, but I'm all about spreading love. I mean, if you think about the whole Doomsday Mom thing, wasn't it more about all about spreading death, spreading influence and power and control of other people's lives, and just trying to think, you know, I'm all about spreading love, when it was actually more about I'm all about getting money. I mean, in terms of the whole cult thing, I'm sure it was under the guise of this is about love and what God wants for you and what God is saying. But within that seemed to be another motive, which is power and money. So it sounds very nice, but so the surface sounds very nice, sweet, it's pretty, it's soft, but the kernel is extremely dark, dangerous, and evil, for lack of a better word.
All right, the state can call its first witness.
Thank you. The state will call Brendan Boudreaux.
So on the stand, let's see what you guys are saying.
Your Honor, could we have
Boudreaux, you're going to come up here and be sworn in by
That's
the
right.
clerk.
Can you please state and spell your first and your last name? Thank you. Raise your right hand, please. You do solemnly swear the testimony testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
All right, sir, go around the court reporter, have a seat up here to my left.
Your Honor, could we have a sidebar?
Is it about what we discussed earlier? The state's probably gonna, you won't complete your direct before lunch?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
Okay.
I will, but not for.
So just a quick question. Does Lori seem too sick to present her case? Because that's what she said literally just a day or so ago in terms of the trial. If you think about how she presented her case, did she seem to cough? Did she seem to stutter? Did she seem sick? I mean, there seemed like a slight breathiness in her voice, but just that kind of cocky remark. Now, Judge, can we have a sidebar? It doesn't kind of seem like someone who's needs to be in bed all day, does it?
Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name's Brandon Boudreaux. I live here in Arizona.
And if you can pull the mic just a little closer to you and roll in a little closer. Thank you.
Sorry.
It's okay. How old are you, Brandon?
I'm 40 years old.
You said you're currently living in Arizona?
I am, yes.
What do you do for a living?
Currently, I own a solar company.
Okay. I want to talk to you sort of about your marriages. Are you currently married?
I am.
Do you have a prior marriage?
I did, yes.
I want to talk about your prior marriage. When did you get married initially?
I was married initially October 31st, 2008.
And who were you married to?
Melanie Cope at the time, she became Boudreaux.
How long were you and Melanie married?
A little over 10 years.
Did you two have any children?
We have 4.
Do you recall approximately when you began divorce proceedings with Melanie?
It would have been in July of 2019.
And do you recall approximately when your divorce with Melanie was finalized?
It would have been in October of 2019.
Was it before or after October 2nd?
It was the middle of October,
Okay.
so after.
Well, so he divorced about 2 weeks after the attempted murder. The attempted murder was October 2nd, and he divorced about 2 weeks later. Pretty amazing.
Now, do you have family here in Arizona?
I have a brother who lives in Tucson now, but at the time I did not have any family here in Arizona.
They lived in another state.
Yes.
Did Melanie have family that lived here in Arizona?
Yes, she did.
Did you know someone by the name of Lori VALLOW?
I did. That was Melanie's aunt.
And did you spend a lot of time with Melanie's aunt, Lori VALLOW?
Yes, we spent a lot of time together.
Do you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Can you point her out and tell us what she's wearing?
She's directly behind you wearing glasses and a blue top.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witness has identified the defendant.
Good job.
When you knew or were spending time with Lori VALLOW, was she married at that time?
She was.
Who was her husband then?
Charles VALLOW.
And how often would you see Lori VALLOW and her family?
Pretty often. We would spend holidays together. We often vacationed together, and our children were close, so it wouldn't be unordinary to see each other every week.
Unordinary.
Were you close with Lori VALLOW's prior husband, Charles VALLOW?
I was, yes.
Did you know other members of
She gulped there.
Melanie's sort of expanded family?
Yes, I did.
Did you know a person by the name of Alex Cox?
Yes, I did.
Who was he in relation to Melanie?
That would be her uncle.
So Lori's brother?
Correct, yes.
And before your divorce from Melanie, did you see Alex Cox often?
Not as often as Lori, but yes, I did see him.
Okay.
Usually at a family get-together.
Did you know anyone by the name of Chad Daybell?
No, I did not.
Did you later become aware that Lori Vallow married a Chad Daybell?
Yes, I did.
Can you try to describe for us the relationship between Melanie, your ex-wife, and her aunt, Lori Vallow?
I would say that she looked at her as maybe more than an aunt, like closer to a mother figure. Her mother passed away when she was younger, and she let her hold a lot of influence in her life.
Okay. Starting sort of the end of 2018 through 2019, did you notice Melanie spending a lot more time with Lori?
Can you ask that question one more time?
Sure. Starting sort of the end of 2018 through 2019, did you notice Melanie spending more time with Lori?
Yes.
In 2019, did you start to notice issues with your marriage with Melanie?
Yes, I did.
Without going into what was said, did you ever speak with Charles Vallow about Lori Vallow interfering with your marriage with Melanie?
Yes, I did. On a few occasions.
So I'm not sure if this is relevant to the trial or to the legal merits, but something I'd be interested in knowing is whether religion played a role in their marriage ending, right? Whether Melanie and Lori getting closer, but in terms of doomsday stuff, started to hurt their marriage, or was their marriage hurt already? Or was their marriage hurt already, and so Melanie sort of sought comfort from Lori, which just made everything worse? It would just be interesting to know the truth about that. What do you guys think?
I want to talk to you about June 25th of 2019. Did that day stick out to you?
Yes, it does.
Why do you remember that date?
On June 25th of 2019, I had a long disagreement with my then wife. My grandfather had passed away suddenly of a heart attack a few days earlier. And she had told me she didn't want to go to his funeral. And that had led to the start of a disagreement that quickly changed and was very different than what I thought was going on.
I know.
It's almost like that's the moment things changed. There wasn't like this steady unraveling, that there was a sudden moment where she doesn't want to go to her husband's father's funeral, and then he realizes, wow, that's not very nice, right?
Have you put your mic just a little closer to you?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. So you said it started out as a conversation about going to your grandfather's funeral,
Yes,
and then it changed into something different?
it did, yes.
During this conversation with Melanie on June 25th, were you accused or told that you had been involved in doing some things to her aunt, Lori Vallow?
I was, yes. This sticks out because it was so bizarre to me. I was trying to talk to my wife about our relationship, and she was using different language that was confusing. She kept saying that she was going to reveal things about me, and it just didn't make sense. And then she accused me of hacking Lori's computer, which I knew I hadn't done, and I didn't know why it mattered to what we were talking about. So, that something like that sticks with you because it's just doesn't connect.
Do you know how to hack into other people's computers?
I do not.
So you're being accused of hacking into Lori Vallow's computer. Did anything get raised during this conversation regarding your sexuality?
Yeah, it was a very long argument. It started in the afternoon and went past midnight. And as things kept escalating, more different allegations that didn't make any sense kept coming up. And one of those was that God had revealed to her that I was gay. And that one stuck out because Charles had told me that that Lori was trying to convince her of that, which I thought was so bizarre. It just didn't make any sense. I was married and we had 4 kids. So.
Did you ever hear anything about allegations that you were trying to help Charles take Lori Vallow?
So if you think about this, how does Lori know this stuff, right? In other words, his own wife is telling him things about himself. And how does Lori know? And I think the quick and easy answer is God told her, right? And if you believe Lori, and Lori's like a mother figure, and you believe that Lori is who she says she is, then that's quite a simple solution. Lori knows this, Lori knows that, Lori knows that. You will learn this from me, except for one small little problem. It's not true, but if you accept her confidence game, well, guess where it's going to get you, right?
Vallow's temple recommend away?
It didn't come up in that specific argument, other than as a side mention of why I might have hacked a computer. But yes, I did hear those allegations.
I want to ask you, are you a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Yes, I am.
Were you and Melanie both practicing members?
We were, yes.
Was Lori Vallow and her family practicing members?
As far as I knew, yes.
When we talk about a temple recommend, what is that?
Inside of our faith,
So don't you kind of get the sense that Lori's trading on people's faith? She knows the coda for people's faith, and then she, uses some of it and manipulates the rest to get what she wants out of it. And if you think about that in the context that we're in now, Lori, the lawyer, it's the same kind of thing. She has a pretty rudimentary understanding of the law. She's quite good at the confidence game. I wouldn't say very good, but somewhat good. She's got the gift of the gab. I mean, she used to be a hairdresser. She's got quite good social skills in terms of connecting with people. She's quite warm in a way. I hate giving her all these compliments, but the point is that in a courtroom, it's slightly different because it's really around facts and evidence. Not saying you can't trade on people's beliefs, but far less so than in a churchy religious sense. And Lori excelled at that. It's much harder to excel at that kind of thing in a courtroom. Do you see what I'm getting at?
we try to set aside the temple to be a place that's sacred. It's a place where you can be closer to God. And because you want it to be a sacred place, we try to live to a higher standard if we're going to go in there. You know, it's the idea of trying to be more like the Savior's example and keeping promises or covenants that you make to him. And so in that process, most of us self-report to a bishop or an ecclesiastical leader and a stake president or a higher ecclesiastical leader, just to verify that you're doing your best to keep those promises. it's kind of a way to help you assess to decide if it's a place that you should go, or am I living in a way that I can go and feel.
I just want to respond to Sally's statement here. It's more than just that. I mean, they've literally got evidence that Alex left his phone with Laurie when the crime was committed. We dealt with this yesterday. Laurie and Alex removed the rear seat and, do I have this right? And the rear wheel that goes behind the Jeep, and carried it into a storage locker. There was also a phone call made from Alex's phone to Laurie's phone that lasted 24 minutes when Alex was actually not there. So who made that phone call? So it's not just that the state believes there were more than one person involved other than Alex because they can't prosecute him. There was more than one person involved. Well, the evidence, that's what this case is all about, right? Timmy, can you lie back?
Feel good about, trying to get closer to God in that space, and am I living in a way that sets it aside and makes it somewhere special, somewhere sacred?
If someone's temple recommend is removed who is a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is that a really significant thing?
For most of us, we would feel like, personally, I would feel that way. It's something that is sacred to me, and it is important. And so I would not want to lose that. It would be something that would reflect that I'm not doing a very good job of my goal to try to be more like my Savior.
Okay. When you are having this argument, this conversation with Melanie on June 25th, what are you thinking?
It began with just frustration, which when I took a little time and was introverted and thought about it, I realized wasn't fair. If she didn't want to go to a grandfather's funeral, I recognized that me feeling frustrated was something I should deal with myself, but not try to force someone else to do something that they weren't comfortable with. And then it was just really painful because the rest of it there's a lot of frustration that comes from, at the end of it, she was asking for a divorce and demanding that we end our marriage. And, I had 4 kids, and this was going to change their entire world. It was going to change everything for my family.
Shame.
Did you, having spoken with Melanie, feel that Lori Vallow was involved in some of these things that Melanie was telling you that was why your divorce should end?
Can you ask that question one more time?
Sure. As you are listening to the things that Melanie was telling you that evening or afternoon into the evening of June 25th, did you believe that Lori Vallow had been involved in some of these ideas that were being told to you as to why your marriage should end?
Yeah, I mean, how else does her aunt's computer getting hacked even come up without Lori being involved? So I got pretty frustrated at one point, and I think I told her I'm going to take a break, and I texted Lori and Charles and tried to call both of them to discuss it with them because I wanted them to understand the gravity. This is my family. This is my kids. This changes the rest of their lives.
I don't think that's correct, Sally.
It's not just whatever was going on for those two.
Thanks,
so you
Mel.
told us that you just mentioned that you actually sent a text message or a couple of text messages to Lori Vallow that evening?
Yes, I did.
Can you scoot just a little closer? Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Why did you text Lori Vallow that night?
Hope that she would have integrity, that she would respond and acknowledge that I didn't hack her computer. I don't know, honestly, just hope, you know. I was trying to find something to fix the problem.
So you felt strongly enough that Lori Vallow was involved in these ideas that Melanie was putting at you that you actually reached out to her.
Yes.
Your Honor, show the defendant Exhibit 122. I could have my paralegal bring that up. I want you to look at Exhibit 122. Do you recognize those text messages?
Yes, I do.
Are those messages that you sent to Lori Vallow on June 25th of 2019?
Yes, they are.
Do those relate to the allegations that were being told to you by Melanie that Lori had provided her?
Yes, they do.
And that was you trying to fix these things that were lies?
Correct.
State will move to admit Exhibit 122.
Any objection?
No objection.
122 is admitted.
If I may publish. Okay. Brendan, just so we understand, when you were shot at on October 2nd of 2019, did you actually provide the police with your cell phone
I did, yes.
so they could download everything?
Yes.
And is this from your cell phone?
Yes.
So we see on June 25th of 2019 at 6:45 p.m., the first message that you sent? And was this phone number, the 808 number, Lori Vallow's phone number?
Correct.
In the message, what did you tell Lori?
I told her that Melanie believed I helped to try to get her temporary recommend taken away, and that we both knew that it wasn't true. Do you want me to just read it?
Sure.
Lori, I sent this to Charles. I'm sending it to you as well. Charles, Melanie believes I helped you to try to get Lori's temple recommend taken away. You and I both know that's not true. She does not believe me. I wanted to send this to both you and Lori. If either of you care at all for me or my children, you'll come forward and be truthful. I've never done anything to hurt either of you. I can't believe you would lie to her about something like this. I gave you a blessing when you're at your worst in my home. My children will be punished if my wife leaves me or can't believe me when I have done nothing. This is on your heads to make it right.
So your initial thing was about that temple recommend because that was so important, right?
Yes.
But that was just one of the lies that
You can see
had
it's
been
still
told to
really
you by
raw for him,
Melanie.
right?
Yes, and at this time I didn't know that she also believed that I was gay. That came after I had sent these texts.
Did you get a response after this first text?
No.
Do we see then a second text at 9:10 p.m., same day, September 25th?
Yes.
What did you say then?
At least have the respect to talk to me to my face, not whispered behind my back. She believes you and you are lying. This is going to affect my children.
Okay. Did she respond to you then?
No.
And a couple minutes later, did you send Lori another message?
I did.
What did you say then?
I will not stop until the truth is known. It says I didn't dip, but a typo. I didn't do the things you said, and because I know I did not, I will find a way to prove it.
Did Lori?
So think about the real world. Someone says you hacked into my computer and you're gay. Not that being gay is a crime, but then someone just believes you. It's not like, well, show me evidence of that. It's like, well, I believe you. I believe that that's true. Like in court, it's like it would be, well, prove that you hacked into the computer. And that would be, I think, fairly easy to do if that did happen, because you would have logs and digital breadcrumbs and so on. Prove that you're gay, I think that would also be quite theoretically simple to prove. I mean, why would he get married again? Why would he have 4 children? Why would he care about being divorced and all that kind of thing? I'm just saying, sometimes I think we need to apply a legal standard to what people say to us. Like, do you have evidence? Can you prove it? Of course, life isn't a court of law, but maybe we should be a bit more discerning about sources and whether something is a fact, right? Because look at how damaging this was in his life, and was it based on legal truth or actual truth or reality?
Lori ever respond to any of those?
No.
Yeah, it is.
Were you able to convince Melanie that these things that Lori had told her were not true?
No.
Would she listen to you about it?
After that evening, she would never spend time alone with me again. There was always someone else with us everywhere that we ever talked or communicated.
Did you want to get divorced?
No,
Did you agree to a divorce?
I did.
How did you and Melanie decide to go forward with the divorce?
We used a mediator.
How does that work?
You have choices. You can either each get your own lawyer and they can help advocate for you through the process, or you can use a mediator. Those are the two, or you can do it yourselves without lawyers, I guess, as well. And as you go through that divorce process, you really discuss 2 key concepts: all of the money and the finance side, and then the children when you have children. And so a mediator is helpful in being able to help you understand what the law thinks if you both can't agree on something, and help you go through and think. It's a lot to think about, and agree on something, and help you go. I was very emotional going through that, and so they're helpful that they can kind of guide you to make sure you're covering all your bases and you're thinking about the future for your kids, thinking about what's fair in the financials, all of those things.
At that time, what were the ages of your kids? I know, I got to go back a few years. So in 2019,
9, Braxton would have been 9. And then I would have had a 5-year-old and a, what would like be 2000, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
and you told us that you started to see a mediator sort of in July of 2019.
Yes,
Do you recall if it was the beginning, middle, or end of July?
beginning of July.
So really fairly quickly after you were confronted with these theories of you hacking Lori's computer and trying to take her Temple Recommend away.
Yeah.
As you went through a mediator, did you agree to have joint custody of your kids?
I did.
Did you and Melanie have a house at the time you were married?
We did, yes. And in the mediation, we agreed to sell it.
Now, prior to the sale of the house, did Melanie move somewhere else to live?
Yeah, we agreed that I would help her find a rental, which we did. And then our house was an expensive house. We were listing it at about $1 million. And so having those young kids inside of it while you're trying to have it show ready all the time was a concern. So we agreed we'd get a rental house where the kids would be able to stay so that they could just be kids and not have to try to live super, super clean. And I would stay in the house and just kind of live in it as a shell house till it's sold.
Okay. Do you recall approximately when Melanie moved out?
July, around the 14th or so, I think. I'm not 100. It's been 6
Mid-July?
years. Yeah, mid-July.
So the kids were living with Melanie in the rental house, and you were staying in sort of I'll call it a community property house at this point. Do you recall when your house sold?
In September, I think we got it under contract, and at which point I started looking for a rental house, probably,
For yourself?
yeah, for me to move into so that we could then do our joint 50-50 custody
Okay.
with our kids.
Did you find a house to rent?
I did.
And was that the 3875 East Phelps Street in Gilbert?
Yes.
When you were looking for a residence, did you consider at all the location of Melanie's rental house?
Yeah, I tried to, we had agreed we would stay within a couple miles of each other so that it would be convenient for each of us. And I also tried to move close to where I had before I had built the home that we had, I had lived in that same neighborhood. So I tried to move closely to a place my kids would be familiar.
Okay. Did you sign a lease for that 3875 East Phelps Street on September 13th of 2019?
Yes.
What was your plan in terms of when you were going to move into that new house versus staying in the community home?
I was going to,
So if you think about this, as far as I understand, they are joint owners of the house, which is worth about $1 million, right? And they both moved out, and literally 2 weeks before the attempted murder, he'd signed a lease on somewhere else, right? And what would have happened if he had been murdered? Wouldn't Melanie, certainly if no one knew who committed the murder, wouldn't Melanie have gotten the house and $1 million? And perhaps indirectly or directly, who knows, Laurie could have gotten some of that.
stay in the community home until right before we finished everything up. So like the end of September, and then I would move over to the new house.
And when was the house, the community house, supposed to close?
October 1st.
Okay. And what was the mediation agreement for that money on October 1st? Who would get what?
It was going to be split between me and Melanie, and it was supposed to all go to one account, and then I would transfer the money over to her.
Okay.
But if he was dead, then she'd get double, right?
So at some point, did the plan ever change as to when you were going to move into the Phelps house?
Yes, I heard from Melanie that I had an option to get my kids early, which I was getting very limited time with my children. That was hard for me. You know, it's difficult going through transitions like that. So she had offered, she said she was going out of town and that I could have my kids early if I got the house early. And so I was excited, and I quickly changed my plans and made a quick move from the current house into the new house to get it ready, because when you have young kids, you have to kind of prepare. You can't just move them in. Everything needs to be kind of organized.
During the mediation, had you and Melanie come up with an agreement as to when each of you would have the children?
Yes.
What was that agreement?
Mondays and Tuesdays would be my days. Wednesdays and Thursdays would be her days. And then we would rotate weekends.
So weekends for you guys was Friday through Sunday?
Correct.
And then how would you hand off the children, and what would happen with your youngest?
I worked, so she would watch my youngest even on my days. And then handoffs would happen at school. If they were in school, we would just drop off and the other person would do the pickup. If they weren't in school, then it would be drop off at each other's houses.
Okay. So you said you worked. Did Melanie work?
She did not.
Okay. So Melanie kind of just tells you she's going out of town on the 26th and offers the children to you. Do you recall about when you moved into now this residence on Phelps?
It's been a really long time. Shortly after, I think, that conversation, about a few days prior to when I got the kids. I think it took me a couple days to move in.
So you had the kids on the 26th.
I did, yeah.
How did you told us you had been planning to move in a little bit later. How did you
That's what
get
I was
moved
thinking.
earlier, quicker? Did you have people help you? What'd you do?
My neighbors that lived across the street from me at the house that I was selling noticed that I was moving and offered to help. I just went and got a truck and decided to move. I was excited. I didn't tell anybody even. I just kind of jumped after it, and then one other friend found out, and he brought another friend. So there's 4 people who helped me move, and they were the only people. I mean, I immediately had my kids after. They're the only people who even knew that I had moved. It was a very quick decision.
Now, you told us that part of the agreement would be that you and Melanie would would drop off the kids. At any time, did Melanie ask you for the address of your new residence?
Yes, she did.
Did you provide it to her?
Yes, I did.
You think anything of it when she asked you that?
I mean, no, I had said I would give her my address always. We had to drop each other the kids, so she had to know where I lived.
Okay. You told us that you hadn't told anyone else your address?
Yeah, it wasn't like out of secrecy. It just hadn't come up yet because it was so quick.
So Melanie knew your address,
Yes,
and then you said 2 of your neighbors helped you move,
correct.
so they knew your address. And then you said one of your friends helped you move?
And he brought another friend, so 2 of my friends knew where I lived.
Okay, so 5 people knew your address?
Yes.
Shown Defense Counsel 123, if I can have my paralegal approach. Do you recognize those text messages?
Yes, I do.
Are those
Okay, so I see someone bragging about how much they watch court TV. LKD, I've got a question for you. At whose home, at which home was the attempted murder? Was it the house they shared or the rental that he just moved into?
the text message between you and Melanie where she asks you for your new address and you provide it to her?
They are.
And was that on September 17th of 2019?
It is.
You're on the state.
So if you think about it, the rental could only have been known by a very limited amount of people. You know, it's not like he'd been living there for 10 years and he'd aggravated the neighbor, or, you know, he had an account with, I don't know, someone and owed money and his address was on there. There's a very limited pool of people who knew where he was staying, including Melanie. It's definitely quite interesting. That's definitely quite an interesting aspect to it, right?
State will move to admit Exhibit 123.
Any objection?
No objection.
123 is admitted.
The state will move to publish.
Go ahead.
It looks like quite a few of you knew
So
the
again,
answer.
you told us that you had provided your cell phone to the Gilbert Police Department on October 2nd. Is this from your phone?
Yes.
And so Melanie texted you on September 17th at 10 in the morning. What's your new address?
That's correct.
Well, if you think about it, it seems as though she wasn't the only person who knew, because Alex Cox knew, and didn't somebody else know? Well, Alex Cox allegedly knew, I guess.
And a few minutes later, 27 minutes later, you provided her 3875 East Phelps.
Correct.
Good to hear.
You
Okay.
told us your parents did not live in Arizona, right?
That's correct.
And at the time, really, you didn't have any family in Arizona. Did your neighbors that helped you move know Lori Vallow?
No.
Did your neighbors that helped you move know Alex Cox?
No.
How about your friend that helped you move, the two people who helped you move with them? Did they know Lori Vallow?
No.
Did they know Alex Cox?
No.
Did you post your address on any
Social media.
LinkedIn or social media?
No.
So how did Alex Cox find out?
So on September 17th and on September 26th, when you got the kids, were the only people that knew your address and knew Lori.
So I know I'm preempting things a little bit, but why on earth in this very short frame of time, and it is short, it's something like 2 weeks, why on earth would Melanie, let me put it in a different way, if Melanie told Lori or if Melanie told Alex where Brandon was staying, why on earth would she do that? I mean, why give the address? Why not just say he's moved into a rental or he's moved into that suburb? Why give the actual street address, right? I'm saying if she did, why would she do that?
Vallow and Alex Cox, your then wife, Melanie Boudreaux.
Yes.
I'm glad you're happy, Singer Majiggy.
So on September 26th, you're in your rental house on Phelps Street. You have your children with you. And is this sort of the first time you have been there with your kids?
Yes.
Okay. And
She says
this was
September
over a
26th.
weekend, correct?
Correct.
So you had your kids sort of that weekend of the Saturday, the 27th and 28th. And then did you follow your normal schedule now of Monday and Tuesday having the kids?
Yes.
And then was October 2nd sort of Wednesday, October 2nd? And that would be the day you would normally exchange the
Correct.
children?
That was the first day that I would not have my kids.
Okay. And so on October 2nd would be the day that Melanie would now have control of the kids that evening.
Yes.
So I want to talk a little bit about your schedule with your kids the morning of October 2nd.
Okay.
Can you tell us sort of what your general schedule was? What'd you get up and do with all the kids?
Yeah, it's been a long time. My kids are different now, but back then, I would probably wake up an hour and a half early. Got to wake each kid up individually. Kind of, each of them has different needs. I think Breeze was still in diapers. Blake might have even still been in diapers. So you wake them up, you make sure that you get them cleaned up, changed, you feed them. Got to get 3 of the 4 of them dressed. They don't know how to dress themselves. So you got to give yourself time. So probably an hour and a half making food, getting kids ready, making sure everybody's good to go and prepared so that when you get within a short amount of time of school, you can get the 2 that are in elementary school there on time.
All right, so you said you had 2 that were in elementary school. Are they in the same school?
Yes.
And so that leaves 2 other kids.
Yes.
What did you do with the other 2 kids?
Blake was in like a pre-K preschool that was right by the new rental that we got Melanie, and then I dropped Breeze off at Melanie's well, she didn't want me to come to her house, so I would drop her off at the park and then watch her run to her mom.
Okay. Do you recall approximately when you left the house that morning to start taking the kids to drop them off at their different locations? Let me ask you this. Do you recall approximately when the kids had to be at school?
7. I probably would have left at 7:30. They probably started at 7:50. That's
And were the schools you said close to your Phelps Street?
it was like probably a 5 or 10 minute drive, depending on if there was some traffic or not.
Okay. So who did you handle first? Where did you go first?
I'd always drop the 2 that were in elementary school first. That was on the way to their mom's house. So we would take those 2, drop them at their school, and then I would drive the rest of the way to their mom's house and at the park.
Okay, I'm going to jump a bit forward to the date that this happened, okay? So I think we're going to just go after the break. Let's see where we are here.
You told us the Jeep had gone on Phelps.
The parties are present, the jury's not present. I guess there was some issue when we had our pretrial conference a couple weeks ago. You had filed a motion
Maybe doing the cross out of order.
witness, and maybe we'll take.
You told us the Jeep had gone on Phelps up to Cole, and you were here, and that's where you saw it turn on Waite.
Correct.
Were you able to kind of see across here to watch the Jeep?
Yeah, you can't see from this aerial view, but there's just like a fence and there's nothing else there. It's just bushes. So you can see almost that whole street there on Waite from where I was sitting.
Which direction was your car facing? Towards Fry or away from Fry?
My nose was pointed towards Fry.
Now, it's not every day that we deal with a survivor of an attempted murder, someone who can come into court and say, this is what I saw, this is the dynamic that was going on. I can tell you who my first suspect was, and literally he said Laurie and Alex Cox, right? I'm going to share something with you that's probably going to raise your eyebrows. You're going to be like, wow. But I mean, it wasn't like there was an attempted murder of me, but I nearly had a serious health incident a couple of nights ago. As you guys can tell, I'm awake. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm awake through the night. And a couple of nights ago, I knew I needed to be up early-ish for a tennis game with a friend of mine. And so I thought, I'm going to try something new, and I'm going to try drinking a little bit of whiskey neat to try and kind of knock myself out, like basically a triple whiskey, not completely neat, but with a little bit of maybe water in it, right? And I'm not a drinker. I'm not a alcoholic. I'm not someone who actually drinks very much. I kind of spoof it a bit on Instagram, but so that's what I did. It was about this time, maybe slightly earlier, and I drank a Jack Daniels, probably like a double or probably a triple, and with a little bit of water in it, and immediately my throat closed, and I literally couldn't breathe. And when I tried to breathe, I coughed. So I was expelling air. And when I tried to breathe in, I'd cough again. Fortunately, I did this downstairs, and I actually had a little asthma pump downstairs and used it, and it kind of went away very quickly. Then I went upstairs and I Googled, can drinking whiskey neat trigger an asthma attack? And guess what the answer is? Yes, because it contains histamine. Red wine also does. And I was actually pretty astonished. I mean, I'd experienced it. I thought, this is a crazy Google search. I bet the answer is no, and the answer was yes. And so does anyone want a half empty bottle of Jack Daniels, right? But I couldn't help thinking, if I had died, if I had had an asthma attack and died, and you saw like this bottle, which I had literally just drunk from, God knows what people would have thought. I think people would have thought, was he murdered? Or they would have thought, did he drink himself to death or something like that? And if an autopsy was conducted, they would have found a little alcohol in my system, maybe whatever 3 tots of whiskey would be. Was I drunk at the time? Not at all. But I can just imagine the room and speculation. And I think people close to me would have said, this doesn't make any sense because he doesn't drink. And anyway, here I am alive, and I can tell you literally what happened was that just kind of a random event. Like I said, I was struggling to sleep, and it's the first time probably in months that I've had Jack Daniels, and so I drank it, and as I say, my throat seized. And so if I had died, it wouldn't have been murder, and it wouldn't have been that I'm an alcoholic drinking myself to death. It would simply have been an asthma attack. How many people would have known that? Because the one possibility is quite sexy: true crime, person murdered. The other one is also quite salacious. True crime dude was actually a raging alcoholic. And then what ends up being the truth? Well, I wanted to sleep, and then I had an asthma attack. Who would think of that one, right? So I'm just saying it's quite refreshing to actually have someone survive an attempted murder and be able to tell his own story, right? Be able to flesh out the true dynamics without, and I mean, he's sitting there with probably the person who tried to kill him in court. And is there much animus from him to her? You wouldn't think so. She claims there was no animus either. But what, if you asked him, what would he tell you? And so things like the dynamics between people tend to be quite secret, quite unknown, and they're quite hard to fathom, especially from the perpetrator's side. From the victim's side, often less so. Yeah, you've got the victim in court able to speak for himself. It's quite refreshing. Thanks, M. Noir. Appreciate it.
So you were able to see the Jeep then continue and turn down this street?
Correct.
After that, did you?
I'm glad you're okay as well, Carla. I also believe Mel was not well. I'm glad I think you're recovering, right? Glad you're okay.
See the Jeep again?
I didn't.
Where did you go? What was your return route back to your house?
What in the world? Thank
I
you
did
so
a
much.
U-turn there on
Appreciate
Cole, and then I turned onto Waite, and I drove down Waite, and then back onto Phelps.
So sort of following the path of the Jeep as well until you got to Phelps?
Yeah, and then I just pulled into my driveway,
Okay.
and then I sat and waited for an officer.
Were you on with 911 during that whole time?
I was.
Share the points. Exhibits 4, 9, 13, and 14. When you came back to your house, well, let me ask you, I want to ask you some distance. When you first arrived at your house and you saw that Jeep, you told us you'd never seen it before. Can you tell us approximately how far away you were from the back of that Jeep when you heard that gunshot?
Well, you could kind of see in that map, there's only 2 houses. I was at the end of the first house, and the driveway was on the end half of my house. So I was past the point of my house and moving towards that driveway. So I would probably say a few feet, 15 feet or 10 feet or something like that.
So, in her opening statements, Laurie said, was there even a crime? Meaning maybe maybe someone threw a stone or a meteor fell out of the sky, right? Well, but how do you explain a gunshot? He heard a gunshot. That's what he says. Also, I mean, this is stupid, but also the Ring doorbell camera records the sound of it, which sounds like a gunshot. But besides that, there's also the ballistics and what do they call it? The gunshot residue in the Jeep. So if it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, and sounds like a duck, it probably is a duck. Same thing with a gunshot. So really, how is Laurie going to make it not a gunshot? I think that's going to be pretty entertaining. I mean, what else could it have been? A tire bursting at the same time. A lightning bolt on a blue sky day.
Was the distance.
Do you recall ever saying maybe 20 or so feet?
I'm sure I could have. It was a long time ago.
I've shown the defendant exhibits 4, 9, 13, and 14, if I can have my paralegal approach with these exhibits. You can take a look at those and let me know if they depict Phelps Street and the house you rented, as well as some cones to represent different things in the street.
Yes,
Do you recognize all of those?
I do.
State will move to admit 4, 9, 13, and 14.
Any objection?
No objection.
4, 9, 13, and 14?
13
Carla, you and Zenaida should go and have coffee.
and 14.
Are admitted.
Do you guys know that I drove through Fresno and I was actually in Modesto last year? Was it last year? Yeah, I think last year. Investigating and going into the fabric of the Scott Peterson case. Went to the Berkeley Marina. I was in San Francisco.
I'm going to start with 4. In this photograph, we see a police car down here. Is this your car here?
It is.
So is this the street that when you're turning down Phelps, you're talking about coming from this end?
Yes,
So you passed one house and your house is the second house.
correct.
Okay.
And that's the white van that was parked there.
Okay. So
I just want to pause on that. I've also been to Arizona and I went to look at the home of where what's his name? Travis Alexander was killed. And it's half an hour's drive from Chandler. So it's actually very close to Mesa. I'm actually sorry I didn't go to Chandler. But yeah, I've actually been in this area as well. Didn't actually investigate this particular area, but I certainly was near it. I'm just saying that because when I look at this image, it reminds me a little bit of the neighborhoods I was driving through on the way to Travis Alexander's home, obviously where Jodi Arias killed him directly, in a really awful way. I wrote something like 5 or 6 books about it, but this definitely looks and feels like the neighborhood that he stayed in as well.
we have another photo. Let me first kind of go here.
Yeah, that's
In this
right.
photograph, is this your residence? And this is exhibit 9.
Yes,
Okay. And this is your driveway.
correct. It's on the outside
And
edge.
so is this the area? Well, let me ask you, where was the Jeep parked?
Oh, really?
You can see just the front of the white van's bumper there. It literally, the bumper of the Jeep was touching that van's bumper. It was
Wow.
just right on top of it. So the back of the Jeep would have been right where your pin point is right now.
Okay, so right at the edge of your
And I guess that's the driveway.
Correct.
I'm going to use 13 and then 14 to give us kind of, we'll go back and forth between them. So in 14 here, is this the white vehicle you were talking about?
Yes,
And this shaded area between the Jeep and the driveway is where you're discussing that the Jeep was parked?
Correct.
So can you see how in your face the whole thing was? The Jeep's parked here, and he had to drive basically around it to park over there, right? If the back of the Jeep was sticking out over here, he would have to drive almost around it to get in there.
And then this is your driveway.
Yes.
The rear of the Jeep was facing you.
Correct. It was facing towards me.
We see two cones here. What do those depict in terms of the location of your vehicle?
The front of my vehicle would be that one that your pen's pointing at, and the back of my vehicle would be there. That's an estimate. Obviously, we were trying to recreate, but that's an estimate about where my car was when I heard the shot and my window shattered.
Okay. So at this point, when we were talking about slowing down, had you started to turn into the driveway yet?
No.
So you were still sort of straightforward?
Correct.
Okay. And so the distance that we're talking about is what we see here in 13 from this cone to the edge of your driveway here?
Correct.
I feel
So a
like they
little
need
over
to
the
use
width of your
Matchbox
driveway.
cars to
Yeah.
explain it.
When you saw the rifle come out of the rear of that Jeep, can you describe for us what you say you saw on the end of it?
It was cylindrical, and it looked a little bigger than a normal. I mean, every muzzle at the end of those rifles has some kind of a sight or usually something on it that they use to when you're shooting. But this looked like it had something different on it. It was a little bigger, and that's why I said suppressor or. I mean, I didn't get a long look at it, but it definitely stood out to me that it looked a little different. I think that's the part that I described was that it was noticeable.
Okay, so it
I wonder if
was
they ever recovered
wider
the
or
weapon.
bigger than the normal barrel itself?
Correct.
Okay. When the window shattered next to you, did anything come in to you that you recognized at that time?
No.
Did you understand at that point there wasn't a hole in your window?
Correct.
As you hear that bang and see your window shatter here, is that then when you accelerate this direction that we see down Exhibit 14?
Yes, that's exactly what I did.
Okay. And then when you got to the end of this street, which direction did you go?
I went right.
Okay. And then you headed straight up Cole and stopped at that park or whatever with the pool?
Yes.
Quick reaction. I can
As
imagine if
you are,
he had stopped.
Waiting
like,
in the
"Wow, what was
driveway
that?" and
here
stopped,
in your
what would have
car,
happened?
did you get out of it? I know you said the door opened, but did you get out?
I didn't get out and look at my car. The door opened, the window fell down, and I think that I just kind of let the window fall there, and I might have moved like part of the window over, but I'm pretty sure I think that and I'd have to probably review, but I'm pretty sure they asked me to stay in my car till the police officer arrived. So I'm pretty sure I just stayed in the car and waited for the officer.
Now, I'm not sure whether this is going to be addressed later on. I mean, it's early days. Day two, this is only day one. We still got to get to day two. But as Christina says, I'm surprised the state has no illustration of the scene. I mean, what frustrates me is we have the technology to make it absolutely clear what happened. Animation, You could literally make a model, literally with 2 matchbox cars and a very rudimentary sort of grid. And, you know, part of what the prosecution have got to do is make their case, but not just that, make their case clearly. And so if you creating doubt simply by not explaining the events that did occur in a clear way, you in a way shooting your case in the foot. I mean, I think their case is still quite strong. I'm just saying this critical area, show it, demonstrate it, put some effort into that. It's not very hard to do.
So before the officer arrived, did you
Yeah, like a
look at your
computer
vehicle
animation,
itself? I'm going
yeah.
to put up Exhibit 25 again.
The first time that I looked at the outside of the exterior of my vehicle was actually when the officer walked me over to my car. And both of us at the same time saw on the top of the door frame there's the spot where the bullet hit. And that was the first time that I knew for certain that I had kind of been shot at. And I remember probably another feeling of shock again, kind of like the first time when someone shoots at you and it's loud. And I remember just thinking, like, that's really close to where I was sitting. Like, it was inches from my head.
Showing the defendant Exhibit 26. That vertical approach. Brandon, do you recognize what that is a photograph of?
Yes,
What is that a photograph of?
that's the photograph of the top of my car.
That show the bullet hole that you saw?
It does, yes.
State will move to admit Exhibit 26.
Any objection?
No objection.
I think many of us have seen
26
this
is
image.
So we see here in Exhibit 26, is this the bullet hole?
That is.
Dumb question, was it there before?
No,
Was your window broken before this?
no.
Now, if you look at that, it's kind of in line with where his head would be if he was sitting there. In other words, it's above it, but if you went down, it would probably be virtually in line, right?
And you were sitting right here.
Correct. You can't see it as well, but that's when you sit in that with the way I was sitting in the chair, my head would have been right at that level.
Yeah.
When you called 911, were you sort of telling them both sort of what had just happened as well as what was ongoing happening, what you're seeing with the Jeep?
Correct.
Did you make that, you told us, as you're immediately driving away?
I'm assuming they recovered the slug, you know, that must have been embedded in there, or certainly a piece of the projectile.
From this shooting?
I mean,
Yeah, I immediately thought the right thing to do was call 911.
Did you tell the operator at one point you were almost out of breath?
Yeah, when I remember when I first called, I'm not a doctor or anything, but I just remember I couldn't breathe. I was like feeling surprised. Maybe I don't think we have a word for that feeling.
traumatized.
Were you scared?
Yeah,
Do you have concern for your life at that point?
yes,
Or were you trying to figure out what had just happened?
yes.
I've shown the defendant Exhibit 125, the 911 call. If I could have a legal play that, just to have the witness identify himself in it.
Go ahead.
can approach with the computer.
Yes.
I suppose Laurie could say the pieces of the projectile that they recovered were planted, right? She could try to say that.
Brandon, if you can just listen to that. Have you listened to your 911 call before?
I have, yeah.
You can listen
Yes.
to that and let us know if you recognize that as your 911 call and as your voice.
Yes, this is my 911 call.
Thank you. Under the state will move to admit Exhibit 125 pursuant to 8031, 8032, and 902.
No objection.
Submitted.
And if we can publish that.
Go ahead.
Gee, I moved to a new home about a week ago.
What kind of vehicle is it that drove?
October 2nd, 2019, 9 hours, 14 minutes, 53 seconds.
911, where's your emergency?
Someone just shot my window.
Okay, where
They're in a Jeep. I'm in the Cooley Station neighborhood. I was pulling in my house at 38755 East. But I can see them driving off.
Okay, someone shot at your vehicle?
Yeah, and it hit my window. It shattered my driver's side window.
Okay, when you pulled into his driveway?
As I was trying to pull in my driveway. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm a little off breath. They just drove off. I saw them drive off.
Okay. Do you know who these people are?
I have no idea. I moved into a new home about a week ago.
What kind of vehicle is it that drove away?
Jeep Wrangler, had a Texas plate on it. It was,
Jeep Wrangler?
Yeah, it was olive green.
Olive green? Okay.
Yeah.
Hold on just a second. Texas license plate?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't get the plate. I'm sorry. I got a little nervous.
That's okay. That's all right. Oh, which way did they go? Do you remember?
They're driving south towards Pecos Road, between Pecos and Rector.
Okay. Okay. Do you don't see the vehicle anymore?
No, they left. They drove off.
Did you see how many people were in the Jeep? Sir?
Yeah.
Hello? Oh, did you see how many people were in the Jeep?
There must have been at least two because somebody shot at me and then somebody else drove off, and I don't think they had enough time to go climb from the back into the front.
Right. Okay.
I
And then
think he's right about that.
do you have any injuries? Did they shoot at you?
They shot at me, it hit my window, it bounced off. It might not have been a real gun. It was loud, but it might have been like a paintball gun or something. 'Cause, I mean, it should have hit me or gone through my window. It just
Okay.
shattered it. It didn't go through.
Okay. Okay. And your window is shattered?
Yeah,
Okay. And you have no idea who these people are?
no idea.
Okay.
They were just parked like right in front of my house.
Okay. They were parked out. So they were parked across the street in front of your house?
You know, in front, right on the same side of the street as my house, right in front. There's a minivan there. They're just parked right in front of that.
Okay.
I'm pulling into my house because they're gone.
So that's something the defense can use, is that he says, I've got no idea, right? I've got no idea who this could be.
Okay. Where are you at right now?
In my car.
Where are you at?
In my car at my house at 38
Okay.
East Phelps Street. I'm going to walk over here and see if I can see what they shot at me.
And what kind of car were you in?
I'm in a black Tesla Model X.
It's a black what?
Tesla Model X.
Okay, black Tesla Model X. Okay. Okay. All right. I do have officers on the way to meet you. Do you want to go inside or do you want to wait outside? Wherever you feel.
I'll wait out here. Yeah, I don't know that it was a real gun. Maybe it was. I can't tell. I don't think it was because we should have gone through my window.
Okay. All right. And what is your name?
My name's Brandon Boudreaux.
And your phone number?
It's probably muted out.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to stay on the line with you just to make sure you're safe, just in case they come back. Do you have any weapons on you?
No.
Okay. Okay. Do you see the officer pulling up?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Looks like he's coming up Phelps. You said 3875 East Phelps, correct?
Correct. I wonder if he's on. There's another section of it. He might be on another section.
Okay, because his car is showing right near Fisher Lane and Phelps Street.
I'm at, what is the cross street? Sorry, I just moved over here. Yeah, I'm at Fisher and Phelps. I don't see it.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
See, this is what a modern courtroom looks like. Look at all these monitors. And so there as well. And so, why not use that and show an animation of the incident? Use that. Use the facilities you've got in the courtroom.
It's funny. His car was showing there for a second, and now it's showing back at Higley and Pecos. So that's kind of weird.
Wonder if he saw the Jeep drive off or something.
Maybe. I know that there's actually an officer that's heading towards you, and then there's other officers that are dispatched that are looking for the car. So we've got several guys looking out for the car, but we have one headed towards your house.
Okay.
I think he accidentally hit his arrive button is what happened, because he's still moving. So just out of nowhere, did you see the guy that
I didn't see who it was. It was weird because I was pulling in and I saw a Jeep, Texas plate, and I thought, oh, that's weird. My neighbor must have someone visiting, and then they lifted up their little back window in their Jeep, and I saw a muzzle, and then I heard a snap and my window shattered. So I just, instead of turning into my driveway, I just hit the gas and drove off because I didn't know. And then kind of when I got my bearings, I realized I should call 911.
Okay.
So then I drove, and then as I didn't drive very far. I just drove around the corner and
Speak into that microphone.
Waited for you guys to pick up, and then I kind of saw them come around the corner and go down the road and start driving down.
Okay, I want to go to the second trial day where Laurie cross-examines Brandon Boudreaux. Are you guys happy with that, or do you want to continue listening? What do you guys say? Guys happy with me to jump into Laurie's cross-examination? What do you guys say? Yeah, he is really shook up. You guys okay with that? Okay, here we go. Let's do it.
All right, the defendant can start her cross-examination of this witness.
Robert Abernathy gets here, he has some photos and things I need to have marked. So
Okay.
can we stop for a minute when he gets here to do
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Just have him go right up to the clerk when he gets here and get
Okay.
him marked.
We say clerk, not clerk. Now think about what's going on here. The survivor of an attempted murder being questioned by possibly someone who wanted him dead in court, presenting herself as a defense lawyer and obviously completely innocent. It's got to be a pretty weird feeling if you, the victim, right?
Mr. Boudreaux, you and I met in 2009, is that correct?
I believe we met in 2008.
Okay. Before you got married, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you got married in 2009, is that correct?
I believe I was married October 31st, 2008.
Okay.
Well, pretty lousy start. Anyway,
But that's when we met, is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
So we've known each other a long time, is that correct?
A long time can mean a lot of different things.
Since 2008.
Correct.
Okay. And we had a familial connection, is that correct?
Yes.
And we always had a friendly relationship, you and I, is that correct?
I wouldn't say always.
Okay. Until what time?
Until probably end of 2018.
Okay. And we spent many holidays together.
We did.
And you and Melanie were married a little over 10 years, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I was there at your wedding, is that correct?
Correct.
so do you know what Laurie's trying to do here? Right? She's trying to present character evidence. She's trying to present herself as a nice person, a good person. I didn't have anything against you. We always got along well. You liked me, I liked you. We had lots of family fun times together. That's the show that she's putting on in front of the jury, right?
And I came to you.
And if that is what she's doing, and it is what she's doing, is she allowed to do that? Is she allowed to say, I'm a really nice person, I'm a really good person? If you're the prosecutor, would you allow that? Should you allow that?
Utah to help you when your first child was born, is that correct?
I'm going to object to relevance.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Correct.
And I was there when your second child was born, is that correct?
And the third child?
You were not present when my child was born, but
Well, I came to help and watched Braxy, so I was there.
you visited with you were with my family. Correct.
Okay. And I flew in from Hawaii when Blake was born to help with the kids, and I watched them while you and Melanie were at the hospital, is that correct?
Object again to character evidence.
Sustain.
You see how quickly she crossed the line in terms of cross-examination? I mean, how long has she been talking? 2 minutes? She's already at character evidence. Basically, I was a good person, wasn't I? And you can see how he doesn't want to be led down this path, right, either. Now, remember in the opening statements, I was saying Laurie was sort of just reading from her script, and every time there's an objection, she would just wait for it to be raised, and then she would just carry on reading as though nothing happened. The same here. She's just going to carry on presenting her character evidence as though everything around is just fluff and nonsense. She's not going to really pay any attention to this until she's not allowed to. Just watch.
And I did watch the kids when Breezy was born as well. Is that
Your Honor,
correct?
I'm going to object and ask
Sustained.
to go into 405 soon.
And we went on vacations together, you and I. Is that correct?
Gonna-
Ms. Vallow,
You see how she just doesn't care what is being said. I'm just going to say it, and then the jury's heard it. I don't have to take it back. I'll just keep saying it, and all of this is just waffle from the prosecutor and the judge. I'm going to do what I want to do.
okay, move on to relevant information, okay? You've established
Do you think she's going to?
you have a relationship with him that's close family relationship since 2008. So go ahead.
And you came to visit me in Hawaii a few times. Is that correct?
And Your Honor, I'm going to,
So do you think she has paid attention whatsoever to what she's just been said? It's just like, you know what, I'm just going to do what I want to do. They can blah, blah, and I can, they're not going to stop me. They can object each time afterwards, but I'm still going to get in my little spiel, right?
object.
I'm just asking in the sense that it was him coming to me.
All right,
There's things that happened there that I'm going to.
approach.
Okay.
Now, can you see down here, it says 3 minutes, 55 seconds. That's how long it's taken for her to basically be like, you've totally crossed the line. Stop what you're doing. Because if we don't stop you, you're just going to carry on, right? It's appalling. I mean, it's Laurie. So let's jump forward.
Are you talking about ever in our lives?
Yeah.
Just
I'm
go
sure
back a
we're
little more.
all human.
And had you been upset with me before that time?
Are you talking about ever in our lives?
Yeah.
I'm sure we're all human. I'm sure there was times I was upset with you.
Is there something specific that you were upset with me about before the June 25th text messages?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to relevance if there's something more specific.
Sustain.
Were you upset with me about Juice Island?
And I'm going to object as to relevance and 404.
Sustain.
Brandon, you had mentioned before that Melanie and I were close. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you were aware that I loved Melanie. Is that correct?
I can't say if you loved her or not.
But you saw that over the 10 years that you were married to her, right? You witnessed it with your own eyes.
What is it you're asking that I witnessed?
Me loving Melanie.
As I said, I can't state what you did or did not feel. I can't say what you felt.
But I acted in a way that was loving towards her, as far as you knew.
I'm going to object again to relevance, 404 and 405 character evidence.
Sustain.
Now, think about what the state has just presented. Photos, dates, evidence, timeline, everything, right? What's Laurie talking about? Feelings. How she felt about me, how you felt about me, how I felt about you. That's her case.
So we were all together as a family frequently, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And there were times when we were at your house as well as my house, is that correct?
An objection to relevance.
Sustained.
And until you sent me that text message on June 25th that we read yesterday, you and I had never had any disagreements with each other. Is that correct?
I would not agree with that statement.
You and I had ever had an argument?
Can you ask that question again?
Did you and I ever have an argument?
And again, as to foundation of when?
I'll allow him to answer. You can answer.
I'm sure we had, I don't know how you would define argument, but disagreements.
Face to face, you and I? Before the June 25th?
Hold on.
That's all I'm asking. Just before
Okay,
that.
maybe rephrase it.
So by the time we met in 2008 until June 25th, 2019, did you and I ever have an argument?
Is there something you're looking for that you're trying to specify? And I'm not sure I can, that's a broad question that I can't think of a specific time where we argued face to face, if that's what you're looking for.
Correct. So you and I have never had an argument in our lifetimes.
I wouldn't agree with that. I would say that there have for sure been disagreements between us, but I can't think of a specific time that I could share where me and you face to face argued. I'm not a confrontational person.
That's true.
Okay. You've known me for all these years. Am I a confrontational person?
I'm going to object to character
So-
evidence under 404 and 405.
Sustained.
Would you agree that I supported you as a husband and a father to your children?
I'm going to object to relevant.
Do you notice what's happening? Almost everything she says, the prosecutor objects to, and she just keeps going. I'm not going to change anything. I'll get into trouble, then I'll agree, and then I'll carry on, right? And of course, I think a lot of you know about this. There's a very serious situation that there's like a bit of an explosion that happens a little bit later. It's inevitable because she's just not listening. She just doesn't care.
Sustained.
So in your testimony yesterday, you talked about this long argument that you had with Melanie. Was that on the same day on June 25th, 2019?
It was.
Okay. And you said it was a long argument. How long did that go on?
It started in the afternoon and it went through past midnight.
So several hours?
Yes.
And you remember this date because that was the day you sent me those text messages, is that correct?
I wouldn't say that's the only reason I remember that date. It's a painful date.
Okay. So you remember that date specifically?
Yeah, I do remember that day.
Okay. And you had mentioned that this argument started as a result of Melanie not wanting to attend your grandfather's funeral, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you were aware that Melanie had trauma with all funerals because her mother passed away when she was 9, is that correct?
Object to relevance.
I'll overrule the objection. He can answer if he knows the answer.
I can't say why Melanie was feeling the way she was feeling. I'm not Melanie.
But you know she had an issue with funerals before your grandfather passed away.
As I said, I'm not Melanie. I can't say what she had an issue with or not.
So you're aware that her mother passed away when she was 9, right?
Yes, I'm aware her mother passed away.
And that she had to go to the funeral.
I'm going to object to relevance.
I'll sustain it at this point. Go ahead. Next question.
So can you see how Laurie's manipulating the entire courtroom? She's manipulating the judge, the prosecutor, the whole courtroom, just in terms of crossing a line, being told not to, crossing it again, being told not to, crossing it again, being told not to. But she's effectively trying, I don't know if she's succeeding, but she's trying to manipulate the whole courtroom. And I think in a sense, she's succeeding in telling her story. Is she succeeding in winning over the hearts and minds of jurors? What do you think?
But she's your wife of 10 years, so you knew that about her. Is that correct?
And again, I'm going to object to relevance, the same question.
It's completely understandable that you would want your wife at your side at your grandfather's funeral. So a disagreement between a couple would begin over that issue. That's not
Objection to
far-fetched, right?
testifying.
That's a statement. Can you, if you want to phrase it as a question, go ahead.
So your argument began because of this issue with not wanting to go to your grandfather's funeral. Is that correct?
Yes.
And was Melanie upset or crying at that point?
No, just me.
Okay. So during this long, several-hour disagreement, you would have covered a myriad of topics. Is that correct?
Can you define a myriad of topics?
Just several different things probably came up during this very long argument.
We talked about several different things, yes.
Okay. And one of those things I had come up in the conversation. Is that correct?
One of the things that came up was you getting your temple recommended and me hacking your computer.
So I'm saying I was brought up in that long conversation just the one time?
I don't know if I could say just the one time. It was quite a long time we spent on that particular topic, which was bothersome.
Okay. So as you were trying to change the subject, Melanie was going back to that?
As I was trying to understand why it was important to her, she focused very much on the subject, yes.
Okay. And you had stated before that Melanie saw me as a mother to her. Is that correct?
I said a mother-like figure.
Right. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that your mother-in-law would be brought into a very long argument. Is that correct?
Objection, speculation, relevance.
That's so weird.
Or someone close to your wife.
Sustained.
But I was not the focus of that entire argument. Is that correct?
My focus was my family, my wife and my children. I love them and I didn't want them to go through pain.
Is that what you spent all those hours arguing?
Yeah, because I love them and I wanted to work through things with my wife. Yes, I didn't spend it for any other reason.
And during this argument, there were several issues that you discussed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And one of those issues was Melanie informing you of text messages that she had viewed?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Is one of those issues a video of you on Facebook dancing at the pink pony that Melanie showed you?
Object to relevance, to 404B evidence, and 403.
Now she seems to be trying to character assassinate him, right? So in other words, my character is great. I'm this loving mother figure. And she's obviously trying to put legs on the gay allegation, right?
Sustained.
Did Melanie show you a video of yourself
Object
during
again
that
to the
She
same
argument?
goes
manner.
back to it. Can you
Same.
believe it? Look at the judge.
What
He's
else
like,
was discussed in this argument?
Objection, relevance, foundation, something specific.
I'll sustain the objection.
How many topics would you say were gone over during this long interview, long argument?
I couldn't say.
So until, did I ever answer the text messages that you sent to me?
I never received a reply.
Were you at that point blaming me for that argument? In your mind?
I think that the only people who can be responsible for ourselves is ourselves, so I was focused on myself and my wife.
Okay. So that argument ended up beginning your divorce proceedings, is that correct?
At the end of that argument, she told me that she needed a divorce, correct?
And who filed for divorce?
I did.
And when was that?
In July.
Do you know the date that you filed?
It's complicated because I went and met with a mediator, but she didn't file the paperwork for a while. So I guess it depends on how you define who filed for it and when.
Okay. Did you file it with the court? Like file for divorce with the court?
A mediator did.
Okay. Oh, so you don't know when she actually put the paperwork in, is that correct?
Correct.
When did you meet with her? Do you remember that?
I do.
What day was that?
In July.
But you don't remember which day in July?
We met several times.
Okay. Did you meet with her on your own, or did you and Melanie just meet with her together?
We met with her together.
Every time?
Yes, every time we went together.
Okay. And that started in July?
Correct.
And do you know when that was final?
Mid-October.
The attempted murder was 2nd
And
of
you
October.
were able to come to mutual agreements during that time? With the mediator?
Can you give me more? What are you looking for specifically on that?
I'm just saying, the mediation was completed, so you came to your agreements, is that correct?
We filed for divorce, so yes.
Okay. So when was it that Melanie moved into the rental house from the house that you were living together in?
I believe I moved her on July 14th, I believe. I'm not certain.
And then you stayed in the house until what date?
Until my home sold.
When was that?
We got it under contract in September, beginning of September, and closing was October 1st.
Okay.
What, did it sell on October 1st and the attempted murder was on October 2nd? Can it be?
And when did you move into your rental house? What day was that?
Mid-September to late September. It might have been in the 25th, 24th, 26th, somewhere in there.
And then you had schedule with the children, is that correct?
Can you ask that question?
I'm just saying you had agreed to a schedule with the children, is that correct?
Part of our divorce, we had a schedule, yes.
And so on October 2nd, all 4 children were with you, is that correct?
It depends on what time you're speaking about.
Well, they spent the night with you, so they would have woke up with you on October 2nd, is that correct?
On October 2nd night, they slept with their mom. On October 1st night, they slept with me.
Okay. that night turned into October 2nd. Is that correct?
If you're saying October 2nd in the morning, then yes. Yes, that would be, my kids would have still been at my house in the morning.
Yes. Okay. And then you had taken them to school. Is that correct? In the morning?
Correct.
You said that you guys got up, you had food, you were getting ready.
Yes.
Normal, typical morning, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then you dropped off your two oldest at their elementary school. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then you took Breeze to her mom and dropped her off at the park. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then,
Doesn't it sound like Laurie feels like she's playing a game? She's like, and then like, there's almost like a lilt to the way she's saying it. It's almost like she's playing a game, or almost like she's taunting him, wouldn't you say?
you took Blake to his preschool and dropped him off. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then where did you go from there?
I went to the gym.
What was the name of your gym? I'm sorry.
EOS.
And then
And you worked out for, you said, an hour to an hour and a half?
Yeah, I wasn't watching it super close, so I can't tell you exactly how long it was.
Okay. And then you drove straight home, is that correct?
From the gym, yes.
Okay. Now, on that day, you had an interview with Detective Pillar, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that the first time that you met Detective Pillar?
Yes.
Was on that day on October 2nd, 2019?
Correct.
you notice she's completely skipped over the incident. So where does she stop? She stops at him going to gym, right? And then she jumps completely over the incident, and then next thing it's with the detective. You notice that?
And in that interview, you told him basically what had happened. Is that correct?
I answered the questions that he asked, yeah.
And you told him all about Melanie. Is that correct?
It's a pretty broad question. I don't know that I could say that I told him all about Melanie.
So you discussed.
So I'm guessing that she's going to try and implicate Melanie as the person that he thinks is responsible. That's what I'm guessing.
Melanie. Is that correct?
We did, yes.
And you discussed me. Is that correct?
We did, yes.
And he had asked you kind of what happened. Is that correct?
He asked me what happened? Mm-hmm. Yes, he asked me what happened.
And you talked about your divorce. Is that correct?
We did discuss parts of my divorce, yes.
And you had told Detective Pillar that someone had convinced her that you were gay. Is that correct?
Can you ask that question again?
You told Detective Pillar that someone had convinced Melanie that you were gay.
I can't remember if I specifically told him that someone had convinced Melanie that I was gay. I would have to review the conversation I had with him to be able to say for certain that's how I worded it.
Okay. Do you recall telling him that she has a friend named Lori? Melanie?
I did not say she has a friend named Lori. No.
You didn't? Would you like to look at your interview?
I
To
said
refresh
that
your
she-
recollection?
I said that she has an aunt named Lori.
Would you like to review this to refresh your recollection?
See, she's trying to impeach him, and yeah, well, he didn't say it's a friend because she's not a friend, she's a relative. But can you see she's trying to impeach him? She's trying to discredit him.
Sure.
Okay.
Have your music. I think she has a exhibit she needs to approach with.
Yeah, please don't hand it directly to him.
It's fine. It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. She's just refreshed.
Wonder if Chad's missing Lori.
She just wants to show him to refresh his memory.
Offering it as an exhibit.
I apologize.
Yeah.
If you want to just read that page to yourself, and then I can ask you a question again.
I think that's quite a good question. Super Solo says, I'd like to know why the judge is giving her so much latitude. You can actually, see if I can, this is obscuring the judge's face a little, but maybe if I just, can you see the judge's face over there? Do you guys, well, first of all, do you guys agree that the judge is giving her a lot of latitude? Do you guys agree with that? Hazel says this judge is extremely patient and tolerant. Right? Of course, something is about to happen probably in the next 10 minutes or so, right? But it's an interesting question, and I think the answer is the judge is trying to let the trial proceed, if I can put it that way. In other words, he's trying to move it along. We saw that with her saying she was sick. He's trying to make sure that her case is heard. And so, in a way, he's being a lot more lenient than he would otherwise be. I don't think it's because he likes her. I don't think it's because he's being manipulated by her. I think it's because he's trying to, in a way, you know, there's that saying, give someone enough rope and they'll hang themselves. I think, in a way, he knows that Lori is, although Lori thinks she's very clever, she's also showing herself to the jury, and the judge is kind of letting that happen, right? I think that's the other side to this. But I think the other part of it is he's just trying to let the trial move along. Because if he makes too much of a stink about the problems, that could lead to even more problems. That's my take on it. And we're about to see things kind of blow up a little bit. And then what happens when that happens? You've got to leave the courtroom. There's an adjournment. Someone's got to apologize and all that. And he's trying to try and keep things running, right? Does that make sense? Do you guys agree with that?
No, that's okay. Thank you. Did that refresh your memory, Brandon?
I read that.
That's also part of it. The judge doesn't want there to be an opportunity for Lori to say, you didn't let me do this, or you didn't. In other words, he's absolutely trying to prevent there being any little excuse for precisely that. So good point, Mel.
I think that maybe a transcriptionist miswrote that, because I wouldn't have referred to you as a friend named Lori. I would have referred to you as an aunt named Lori.
Okay. And it was me that you were talking about that convinced her that you were gay? Is that what you were referring to?
In that context, I never said that Lori is the one who convinced Melanie that I was gay.
Okay. So in the second paragraph, it didn't say she's the one that convinced her that I'm gay?
Improper impeachment, refreshing. I'm not sure what she's doing.
Do you notice she wanted to make it very clear that Brandon had gone to gym, and I guess, when she said, "How long were you in the gym?" I think that idea was to put a little thought in the back of the jurors' minds while you were going to gym. And so she's trying to nevertheless smear him on this thing, which it's almost like she's saying, I had nothing to do with that, but aren't you gay? Right? Can you see that seems to be the tactic here?
Sustain.
Would you like to read it again?
If you would like me to, I can read it again.
Okay. It's line 251.
So, LKD, by the way, thanks for your super chat earlier, says, I think she's trying to emasculate him. That's how she views gay men, as not being masculine. If you think about some of the men in the story, Charles VALLOW, who, from what I've seen, in police footage, seems like a very nice, reasonable guy. So does this guy. And then compare them to Chad Daybell, who is her apparent choice of the perfect husband, right? Chad is a self-published author, and his books didn't seem to do terribly well. Chad didn't seem to have any money. I've actually been to Rexburg, been to the area where he lived, and I remember when I was there thinking, who on earth would want to give up wherever they were to come and stay here? But of course, if maybe the whole thing was, let's get together, Chad, and move to Hawaii. I don't know. But what I'm trying to get at is, for whatever reason, Laurie didn't seem to get along with Charles, who's quite a masculine guy. Laurie didn't seem to approve of Brandon, allegedly, I guess. But he seems like quite a nice guy as well. He's got a good job, good car. Compare these individuals with jobs and lives, and they're good fathers, to Chad. It's quite an interesting thing, isn't it? Quite an interesting thing. And I do think what's going on here is a woman who has had 5 marriages and who's aware of her power over the opposite sex, and combine that with religion, with this whole thing of exerting power through sort of a cult apparatus, with sexuality as a driving force, in order to do what? In order to gain what? Money, get money. And so ultimately, when someone isn't, I don't know, giving you exactly what you want, well, then just liquidate them and get their money. That seems to be the psychology here. I like this guy until I don't, well, then all he's good for is money. Is Laurie the only woman in the world who thinks that way? do you think?
Thank you. Did that refresh your recollection?
Yes, I read a different line. That is that in 251, I did specifically say that I thought you.
That I had convinced her.
Can you ask that
That I
question?
had convinced Melanie that you were gay?
I don't think that's a very good point for Laurie to emphasize. I really don't. But anyway.
I said that I specifically thought that you had been involved in convincing her that I'm gay. Yes, correct.
Okay. And so she did not show you herself a video of you dancing at the Pink Pony.
Oh
Is
my
that
God,
correct?
she's doing it
For
again.
relevance to 404B.
It's all sustained.
So can you see how there's going to be a blow up in about 10 minutes, but can you see how Laurie is misbehaving? She's mischievous and misbehaving and doing it far more so than she did in the first trial. She's just flagrantly ignoring objections. She's just presenting her case and whatever, and it is starting to annoy people, including the judge, right?
And what was your understanding of how I convinced Melanie of this accusation?
Kind of speculation.
Can we sidebar?
Yeah, so let's jump ahead. The joy of.
All right, members of the jury, we're going to take a 15-minute recess, morning recess. We will resume in about 15 minutes. Please remember the admonition.
All rise for the jury.
All right, please be seated. The jury is no longer present. We've concluded that sidebar. A record's been made. I would just caution the defendant again. She needs to be very careful, and she's getting into areas that could open a huge door that I don't think she wants open. I'm going to make another record at 10:24 to 10:25. We held a sidebar that I don't think made it onto the court record. That sidebar again discussed similar issues of if the defendant brings in evidence or testimony that she was a good person and no ill intent.
So you notice the judge is standing up, and there's going to be a point where, I'm not sure if it's actually in this clip, but where he addresses her and he's almost like Batman over her. But you can tell the fact that he's standing up, he is also standing up for what has been building up all of this time, I think, in a way. In a way, he's been energized by all of this, and that's why he's not just sitting there talking about it. There's something else I wanted to mention. Anyway, let's continue.
Intent and those sorts of things and specific acts of.
What I want to mention is, here's a good example of why the judge has been, to some extent, reluctant to intervene, is because this is literally what happens. Everything stops, and you could, in a way, literally have a sidebar and a big brouhaha after every objection, right? And it would just create trial that goes on 10 times longer than it otherwise could or should, right? So he is about to chastise her, but I'm just saying the reason he's being fairly lenient is to allow at least some of the trial to proceed, so that there's a little bit of progress in what is going on, right?
Of her being a good person, it could open the door to other things that she may not want the door open to. The state, the defendant, and advisory counsel were at the bench when we had that short 1 minute sidebar, but I don't know if anyone wants to supplement the record on that. Ms. Kay?
Just, Your Honor, that again, the state did raise any issue of character evidence under 404A and 405, that if the defendant opens the door and tries to advise that she is a good person, a peaceful person, a kind person, a loving person, any of those other types of things, that we believe that would allow us under 405 to then bring in specific acts such as the murder of her children, her husband, and her current husband's wife.
All right.
Quite a strong
Which would also be
argument,
404B that they withdrew.
No, it'd be
Yeah,
405.
they withdrew it, but if you bring up 404 that you...
Then all 404B is in, or do we get a hearing on what 404B can come in? If I open the door, do I get a hearing? We stop trial and I get a hearing on...
Stop. We'll have a very short hearing, okay? If you're going to introduce how you have great character and good character, we're going to have a short hearing on what evidence that they can bring in to rebut that character, which could
Okay.
include being convicted of 4 murders.
And
So
would you
talk
like...
to your advisory counsel during the break. And
You don't need to yell at me either.
yelling at you, okay?
Yeah, you are, and you do not need to talk to me that way. I'm
Take her
very
out.
courteous.
Take her out.
I'm very courteous to
Take
you.
her out. No, you have been nothing near courteous to me during the course of these proceedings. Talk with your advisory counsel about the rest of your cross. We're going to resume in 15 minutes.
All rise.
Now, when I first saw that, I wanted to know the context for that. I wanted to see the context for that. And we just have. We've just seen all of those little misdemeanors, all of those little transgressions that they sort of allowed Laurie to get away with, right? And so, because when I first heard that, I'm going to play it again, but when I first heard that, I thought, there's definitely a little bit of pique with the judge. You know, he did raise his voice a little bit. And I'm sure it's reasonable, but I'd like to see that. And now, what do you think? Do you think that was reasonable? What do you guys think? Do you think, because he is a little upset, do you think he is reasonable with that? Because do you notice near the end of that, he says, talks about being courteous. Anyway, let's play that one more time, just the end of that.
Yeah,
405.
they withdrew it, but if you bring up 404 that you...
Then all 404B is in, or do we get a hearing on what 404B can come in? If I open the door, do I get a hearing? We stop trial and I get a...
So can you hear Laurie's, there's like a taunting cheekiness, cockiness in how she's addressing the judge. And to be clear, as someone mentioned a moment ago, Laurie has actually asked for this judge to be recused, right? And that hasn't happened.
hearing on...
Stop. We'll have a very short hearing, okay? If you're going to introduce how you have great character and good character, we're going to have a short hearing on what evidence that they can bring in to rebut that character, which could
Okay.
include being convicted of 4 murders.
And
So
would you
talk
like...
to your advisory counsel during the break. And
You don't need to yell at me either.
yelling at you, okay?
Yeah, you are, and you do not need to talk to me that way. I'm
Take her
very
out.
courteous.
Take her out.
I'm very courteous to
Take
you.
her out. No, you have been nothing near courteous to me during the course.
And I think that is true, where she says, I've been courteous to you. And I think it's true. She hasn't been courteous during these proceedings. She's ignored him when he's spoken, especially during her opening statements. And that is, in a real sense, the problem here is she's not being courteous isn't really even the word. She's flagrantly abusing his leniency. She knows she's doing it. And they're using a very nice word to say, well, you're not being courteous. She's being extremely manipulative. And so do you think that the judge was justified in getting a little bit angry? I mean, he definitely did get a little bit angry. Do you think he was justified? Right? And I think that really does summarize it. She's a brat. And I agree with what Mel says, because this is the real Laurie VALLOW. And it's a pity the jury didn't see this. This is the real Laurie. Laurie presents herself as sweet and kind and all those things. What did she say? I'm only here to spread love. Remember, she said she ended her opening statement with that. I'm just here to spread love. Just in terms of this little bit of the trial that we've covered, has it felt like that in the way that she's trying to still undermine Brandon Boudreaux? Let's listen to this one more time. You can tell the judge is standing up. He's standing up literally and metaphorically for what he's feeling. And he's going to, brook no truck with any further issues. And that's exactly what he does. He sends her out of the court. Let's listen to it one more time.
Character and good character. We're going to have a short hearing on what evidence that they can bring in to rebut that character, which could include being convicted of 4 murders. So
and would you
talk
like
to your advisory counsel during the break? And
you don't need to yell at me either. I'm
at you, okay?
Yeah, you are, and you do not need to talk to me that way. I'm very courteous. I'm very courteous to you.
No, you have been nothing near courteous to me during the course of these proceedings. Talk with your advisory counsel about the rest of your cross. We're going to resume in 15 minutes.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to end there. This is definitely the part that I wanted to, just for my own interest, I wanted to understand and review. And so we've done that. It's been a 2.5-hour live. I did say our goal is if 5 of you give super chats, I'll do more live reviews of this trial. So I'm not sure if we're going to do that. Linda Garrett says, the judge is not yelling, just firm. Let's have a look at some of your comments. Christina says, I'm sure this is Laurie VALLOW restraining herself. Sally says, thank you. Hazel, thank you. Eclectic says, she reminds me of a preteen or teen. Yelling, not yelling to me. But do you agree that Laurie this time around is far less appropriate, I guess is the word, than she was in the first trial? She seems to be taking a lot more chances, and there's that saying, familiarity breeds contempt. She seems very familiar now with the judge and the prosecutor, and it seems like she is backing herself through that whole confidence game. Do you think it's working? Do you guys think it's working? Carla says, this has been really fun live. Thanks, Carla. And I can't help thinking about this myself. When I think of Laurie, there's a saying, when you're in a hole, stop digging, right? Also that saying, give someone enough rope to hang themselves. We can look at Laurie and scoff and laugh and point our fingers, right? But to me, the question is, in what way are we, and this is not for you to point the finger at me or anybody else, it's for you to point the finger at yourself. It's for me to point the finger at myself, where you say, in what way are we our own enemies? Because I'm sure they are. It might have to do with somebody else that is maybe actually a good person or an okay person. It might have to do with health. It might have to do with a particular course of action we've taken in our lives that we should stop. Maybe you own a car and it's really time to stop repairing it. Maybe you're in a relationship that you really need to stop investing in. Maybe you or I, we persisting on a particular path that we need to stop persisting on. We need to change what we're doing. And I'm going to tell you a short little story. Thanks, Christina, for that. I'm going to tell you a short little story because, again, it's not about me blaming you or you blaming Laurie. It's about us acknowledging our own stubbornness in certain areas. And it doesn't have to be that we're breaking the law or some huge thing. It might just be an area that we need to just be aware of. So I'm going to tell you a little story, take about 5 minutes, and I hope it's going to stay with you. And I want you to think about this as you go through the week and try and think about, is there an area in my life that I'm being stubborn that maybe I'm my own worst enemy, right? And so listen to this story. I was once on a cycling tour. It was actually, ironically enough, where we cycled a certain amount of kilometers each day, and then we'd actually raise money for the church. And anyway, what happened on the cycling tour is I actually got sick. I started getting sick. And I was very determined because the idea is that the guys ride about 1,000 kilometers over about 10 days, and the girls ride about half that amount of time, half that distance. And I was determined to make sure I rode the full distance. Anyway, I started getting sick. I kind of got a cold. And then the next day was worse, and the next day was worse. And I was like, I'm just going to push through. I'm going to just keep going, And then one day I got up and I was really sick that day, and I had a bandana or I had something around my neck or around my head or something. And it was a really cold day. It was in winter, I don't know if it was winter, but it was early spring then or something. But anyway, it was a cold day, and this cold wind blew some material off of me. It may have been a scarf or something. I'm not quite sure what it was, but it was almost like a bandana, almost like a kerchief that I'd had, I think, over my nose. Anyway, the wind blew it off directly into my bicycle chain, and the motion of the chain moving was like a conveyor, took this material, and as it passed through the derailleur completely snapped and it broke. And so it was actually impossible now to continue riding. And so because I couldn't ride, I didn't ride because it was impossible to ride. It wasn't something you could fix easily either. And so I had to retire at the beginning of that stage, right? And I didn't really think about it. I just felt bummed out. I didn't really think about it until a day or two later when there was a group of us assembled in a hall. I think it was in a church hall. And the young people, they were asked to give their testimonies, right? And this one kid got up and he said, and he said he was watching me get sicker and sicker and sicker, and he was praying. He was saying, please, God, stop this guy from riding. He's kind of killing himself, right? And then he said this incredible miracle happened where God blew this thing off my face and broke my bike. And I was sitting there listening to this thinking, jeepers, dude, so it's your fault kind of thing. I mean, a little bit tongue in cheek. But I couldn't help thinking afterwards just how stubborn I'd been, and in a way that's kind of dangerous, because just that simple thing of, you know what, I insist, I I have this little goal in mind, and I insist on getting what I want, right? It's a stupid thing. I want to cycle a certain number of kilometers, right? Meanwhile, you're doing serious damage to yourself, and things aren't improving. And don't you have the alacrity to simply see that, to see that, well, what is the point of this goal if you're doing all of this damage, right? And it was almost through this other individual looking on that I sort of realized how stupid it was. Like in another way, it was just like, I just want to get through this and do this. But someone else looking on was actually, in a way, not traumatized, but certainly disturbed. He was literally so disturbed. He was praying, God, please do something about this guy. Like, this can't continue. And I'm telling you this story so that in a similar way, you can observe something that is clearly idiotic in a way, right? Not even in a way, it is idiotic. But how do you get out of being inside yourself where you go, you're being stupid, this isn't really so important, let's get on a different track, right? Because we're so used to being inside ourselves. And I don't like to say this because someone actually mentioned it and I don't really agree with it, but let me say it anyway. I think I'm quite controlling of myself. I don't think I'm controlling of other people. I think I'm quite controlling of myself. And I think if you quite self-disciplined and self-controlling, that can actually be a bad thing when you on a path that, I mean, think about it. Is cycling unhealthy? Is wanting to achieve a certain goal unhealthy? In a strict interpretation of that, it's not. It's being ambitious, it's challenging yourself and so on. But next to that, the context of you getting sick and et cetera, you need, that's a really good barometer, I think, of sensible intelligence, is where you can say, this isn't healthy for me. It doesn't feel good to stop and to give up or whatever, but this isn't healthy for me. I need to go on a different path. So it's a silly example that I've given, but I've never forgotten it myself. And I hope that you guys are going to think about it in your own lives. I must say I was confronted by the exact same thing when I was in Tenerife investigating the Jay Slater case, and there were about 3 instances where I got lost in Tenerife. One was driving a vehicle, another one was hiking, doing a hike, and another one was basically just trying to find a parking space and not having my cell phone roaming stopped, right? And that was another, and this is I think an everyday example where you driving or you're doing something and you simply need to stop what you're doing. You simply need to not continue on the path that you're on. And so the one is your cell phone isn't working and you don't know where you are. How do you deal with that? You're in a foreign country. One of the answers is reach out to a person. If your cell phone's not working, a cell phone's not the only way to navigate this earth. There's also other people and other things you can do. If you are hiking, and I literally was hiking and I got lost, just like Jay Slater did, as far as I'm concerned. I literally did exactly what I think Jay Slater did. I was hiking. I thought I knew where I was going. I ended up going off the path. And it was that same thing again. I want to get there. I've hiked for quite a long way. I don't want to turn around. I'm going to persist. And the Jay Slater thing is right in my mind. And I'm like, you're doing a Jay Slater here. Stop. Turn around. Go back. You have wasted your own time. You were silly, but don't make this worse than it already is, right? And then guess what I did? Stop, turned around, and found my way, right? And what I'm trying to share with you is a simple thing where persisting may not be the answer. Look at what Laurie is doing. She's on trial for one crime after another, and she's just persisting on it. You know what she could have done? She could have confessed. If she confessed right in the beginning, she may have even gotten a little bit of leniency, right? If she'd confessed and apologized, instead she's persisting. In what ways, far less egregious than that, are we persisting? It might be with a relationship with someone that doesn't love us, or with a vehicle that we should give up on, or I don't know, whatever course of action. Maybe the best thing is to not continue with it. It's not something we like to think about because typically giving up has a negative connotation. And the moment you do give up, you admitting you made a mistake, which we don't like to do either. So, at the moment that you stop, you are in a way creating a failure, right? The flip side to that is the moment you stop is the first moment you're taking a step in the right direction. The first moment you're not wasting any more time. The first moment you're not wasting any more perhaps money. The first moment that you're on the way back to where you need to be going, right? So that's another way to think about it as well. And so that to me is a potential lesson to learn out of this, instead of just kind of in a very shallow way observe someone and, well, that's not very smart, and this apply it to ourselves, this thing of how are we not being smart, and how can we live better in areas that may not be absolutely critical and may not involve crimes, right? But certainly may save us time, save us from wasting time, wasting our energy, and let's start going in the right direction as soon as possible, right? Let's have a look at some of your comments. Super Solar says giving up can be brave or just plain wise. Well said. Yeah. So often it's attached to ego and pride, and it's just easier to persist. You don't need to think about it. But it can actually take courage to stop and turn. And associated with that, I must say, is relief. When you start going back and you end up on the right path back, it's a relief. Sandra JC says that's great advice. Hazel, thanks a lot. Just a couple more comments. Use logic, yeah. Linda Garris says, I'm in a situation right now with my son that I need to change, but it's hard. I know what needs to be done. Yeah. I mean, I can think of someone, I'm not going to say who, that needs to apply this particular lesson, but unfortunately, one can't impose this on someone else, even if you love them. They've got to take that up themselves, right? And some people never do, and hopefully some people do, and I guess we'll see. Anyway, I just want to thank all those who gave super chats, especially around the world. Really appreciate that. LKD, Jody C, Christina, thanks very much. Thanks also everyone for joining me on this live stream. I will see whether I continue coverage in the week. There's still quite a lot to say in terms of the Madeleine McCann case. I'll be putting up another video on that probably in the next 2 hours. I'm not sure if any of you will be awake for that, but if you are, then that will be coming up quite soon. Again, thanks everyone for being here, and I guess I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Enjoy the summer. It's midwinter here and it's supposed to snow. I'm actually going to look out the window of this live to see if there's snow outside. If there is, I'll maybe take a photo. Okay, guys, that's all from me. See you guys next time. Ciao.